I'm Doug Atkinson here at Solutions Review, and I want to thank all of our panelists and speakers for participating in this year's Insight Jam. As we race to learn, use, and implement ever more powerful AI technology, we must recognize the inevitable human impact of this transition. Unlike technologies of the past, artificial intelligence is built on neural networks and will relentlessly deliver human value better, faster, and cheaper. How we best react to this moment is a conversation we want to host here at Insight Jam with events like this one and at our community site, insightjam.com, where you can connect with experts, colleagues, and peers. If you haven't already joined Insight Jam, please do. And if you have, please invite a colleague to join as well. Thank you very much for being here and enjoy this event.
Solutions Review presents Insight Jam, the home for the human conversation.
Hello and welcome to the 7th annual Insight Jam Live. My name is Jonathan Paula. I'm the Director of Multimedia and Events here at Solutions Review, and I am so very excited to kick off 26 hours of live programming this week on the Solutions Review YouTube and LinkedIn channels as we discuss human development focus and the impacts of AI all week long. And we kick things off with our first panel of the week, Personalized Learning, Collective Wisdom, AI in Communities as the New Classroom. 6 experts assembled from around the country are going to discuss that today, all led by our moderator, Monica Higgins. Hello and welcome one and all. It is a pleasure to have you here with me today. And good morning to all of you. So we will begin with some brief introductions, 30 seconds or less. Tell the audience a bit about yourself and maybe your background in this space. Monica, we'll start with you.
I am Monica D. Higgins. I'm the founder of Futureproof, and we do AI skills training for business operations and customer experience professionals that drives results.
Excellent. Thank you very much. And next up, let's go over to Courtney. Hello and welcome.
Hi, thank you so much for having me. My name is Courtney Bach. I work for the Meade School District in Eastern Washington, where I split my time doing AI implementation, helping support teachers implement AI in a really responsible and ethical way. And then I spend the other part of my time as a K-5 library media technology specialist, so books and robots. And I also have a little bit of a background in AI. I worked for a local AI company for a couple of years earlier on in my career, helping train customer service chatbots.
Awesome. Thank you. Welcome and glad to have you here. Next up, let's go to Johnny.
Hi, I'm the founder of Dataless Consulting. We leverage AI to make bespoke software 10 times faster, 10 times cheaper. I have a degree in psychology, and that permeates everything that I do. I'm excited to be here.
Glad to have you here. Next, let's go to Stephen. Welcome to the show.
Hi, I'm Stephen Arthur, Director of AI and Analytics at ECPI University, or East Coast Polytechnic Institute. I'm in charge of rolling out AI across the board and putting it into our curriculum, developing our own AI platform, and inserting AI into everything that we do, including operations.
Awesome. Thank you for being here. Priya, welcome. How are you?
Hey, thank you for having me here. I'm the CEO for Wheel Data Strategies. Basically, after 30 years of working in the corporate world, I wanted to create something that can give back in terms of data and AI strategy to, mid-sized startup companies so they don't make the same mistakes we did. I focus on spending more time explaining and building awareness on AI. AI fluency is my passion, and how we build it as individuals or as a group in workshops and classrooms. So that's where my current passion is giving back for helping AI do good and help the community learn about AI.
Awesome. Thank you for being here. And last but not least, Walker, welcome.
Thanks for having me. I work full-time for Goodway Group, which is an independent strategic partner in connected commerce marketing. I lead learning and development there with a heavy focus on AI. I also operate a consultancy called Mackit.io for tech and tech-adjacent companies looking to upskill in things like leadership, AI, and technical skills.
Awesome. Glad to have all of you here. This is going to be a great discussion, but since I am not qualified to have it myself, I will turn things over to the esteemed group to my right. Monica, kick us off, please, and good luck.
Sure. I'm excited about this conversation today. So how do we prepare the power of pure insight when AI actually tailors the learning to individuals? What's your thought, Courtney, since you're actually on the school side of things?
Yeah, no, yeah, thank you. This is a really great question. And, my lens comes from the education world, and this is my 15th year in the classroom. And as I'm seeing, AI being implemented, by teachers, I think the most important thing for preserving that power of peer insight is having AI do like some of the pre-work for students where we're doing some initial learning or, doing drafts and, getting some just good cognitive background. And then I think adding in the peer insight after that. So having debates with students, Socratic seminars, and really making sure that we're including that human element in the learning. So like while AI might help us like reduce some of the cognitive load at the beginning of the learning, we add in peers and teachers to help with just more relational connection and being able to learn at a deeper level, because the AI can prepare the students, but the human interaction is really what deepens the learning and can change people's minds or really just support the learning that they've already done.
As a former middle school teacher, I approve that message. And what about you, Johnny, in terms of what you're saying?
I mean, for me, I'm always reminding people that we have to remember that AI is a tool just like any other that we've had come our way in the last 30, 50 years. A good example for this is if you're writing an email, right? If you receive an email from a colleague and you're like, oh, I really don't like the way this email is written, you can ask the AI, like, are they being passive aggressive? Or you can ask the AI as if you were the one who wrote the email and say, hey, what do you think of this email I just wrote? And it can put you into the mind of the person who sent the email to you, right? I think one thing we really need to do as people who are on the forefront of this new technology is think deeply about how we can use these tools so that we don't pigeon ourselves into this inevitable trap of being too me focused. We can ask the AIs, we can structure prompts in a way that create a much more broader group focused thought process. It doesn't have to be solely tailored to us.
Yeah, I think it's interesting. There's sort of three approaches that are emerging here. One is how do we use AI plus community to learn about other things? One is what Johnny just pointed out, which is actually how do we use AI to enhance community learning? And then there's a third one that I've really run into, which is how does community learning enhance the ability to use AI and learn things like critical AI literacy and prompt engineering and customization of AI and data analysis with AI. And I've found it's incredibly important to over-index on the amount of community building approaches to getting companies to adopt AI. So I've done classroom teaching in my life, I've done tech work in my life, and I've done corporate development. And those three paths are all incredibly important to think about. I think the question was framed as like, how do we learn a third thing using these two tools? But I love where the discussion is going around how these tools reinforce each other.
Yes, and I loved how, Johnny, given your psychology background, using that to set that lens. And then Walker, you mentioned something in regards to I just forgot what it was. We're going to come back because it's going to come back.
We can clean all this up. Everyone just be quiet for 5 seconds.
Okay.
All right, take it away whenever you want. I'll make the edit there.
All right. We'll come back to Walker on that point because there's something you said that resonated with me, and I was thinking about something that Johnny said. Okay. Priya, what are your thoughts on this?
So,
I'm sorry. You mentioned, so my question for you is, most of the AI implementations happening from a top-down approach versus a bottom-up.
Yeah.
So I wanted to get your insights on that.
Yeah, and I'm sort of working both sides of that. Being the head of L&D, I really jumped in on sort of the grassroots, as we call it, side of like, let's just get everybody using these and finding their own use cases and building their own bots and sharing them on Fridays and, like all that kind of stuff. Versus like, there's an enterprise-wide tool that we want to adopt that we need to train everyone how to use, and all of the governance and security and privacy pieces that go into it. So those two really have to work hand in hand. I think of the grassroots piece as preparing the workforce to work with AI, like developing the skills is what's really important there. And then the sort of top-down part is where all of the governance and data architecture and security and privacy and, all of those pieces need to be centrally monitored and implemented. in order to be successful.
Thank you for that. And Priya, since you came from the corporate sector, love to get your thoughts on this.
So yes, the reason when I started teaching corporate ed workshops, it's more on leadership, is what I found was, we can do all that basic preparation, as Courtney and Johnny said, with the AI. It personalizes your training. Great. It also, the sense making, I think Courtney alluded to that with her students. I think that is so important even in the corporate world. We tend to get protective, defensive about what we know and we don't know. So having that community is kind of important, because it really, what I would say is pressure tests what you learned, right? You have to ask your partners or your group, well, I was planning on doing this. And they'll say, no, wait, you have forgotten that the A, B, and C have to be considered, because the politics, the cross-matrix structure can be so complex. So you can be the naive person with your newfound knowledge that you just got all dumped onto you with the AI, but you don't know what else. And so I think the sense-making part of learning is, does this really fit? It's not a textbook case anymore. Does it fit in the context of where I'm working? Really needs a community feedback. And, just having the students in a workshop and hearing the different viewpoints, it just triggered so much excitement and so much, oh my God, you do it that way, I should try it. It's kind of an approach, so that's where I take it. It's more of a pressure testing that judgment that you learned with your wonderfully personalized AI tool, whatever it may be.
I totally agree, because the group discussion is where the magic happens. I mean, the personalized approach with AI is, it's meeting people where they're at. So wherever they are, their learning path, it's meeting them where they're at. But the magic happens when they have the group discussions and share their learnings with each other, because how you interpret something or learn something is different than the next person. And that's where the magic happens. Stephen.
Hi, I resonated with what Courtney said, which is probably not a surprise considering we're both on the educator side. But AI is a supplement. It's not a substitute for the work that we do and as we learn. Education is a social exercise. It is a rare person that can go and learn something all by themselves, even with the use of a tool like AI. AI personalization should handle those early layers of understanding, and it's the peers and instructors that handle the interpretation and comparison and challenge. Insight is stronger when ideas collide, and these LLMs are often just always telling you you're always right and never pushing back on you. AI removes friction, and the human interaction restores it.
Love that. We're going to soundbite that one. I know in my work in terms of training business professionals, it goes back to the magic happens with the group discussions, because people are talking about workflows, how they're actually using it, looking at, as companies are looking at ROI, the individual ROIs and how the collective ROI happens. So that's really interesting. The other thing, I think it also comes from when they have the discussions, it helps them with their judgment. I had a conversation with someone, a dean at a college, and one of the things that they were hesitant about having generative AI, having the students use it, because they're using it, that they're not fact-checking information. They're just handing papers in and they're not reviewing it, and they haven't developed the critical thinking skills yet. So being able to develop those critical thinking skills to have the discernment and the judgment as to something is right or wrong. And again, having those discussions amongst themselves in that regards.
I think that's so important for ensuring accuracy, especially when we all know that LLMs are probabilistic. And so sometimes you get invented data and things like that. But also for raising the bar, right? An LLM by its nature is sort of the average of everything that was ever written on the internet. And, I've read a lot of stuff on the internet, and the average of what I've read is not exactly what I want to shoot for in terms of quality. So, I think only community and working with people who have different viewpoints or are more experienced in certain areas or have a different skill set, that's how you can then take that sort of average midline work that an LLM can produce for you and raise it to something that's truly exceptional too.
Great point.
Monica, Monica and Walker, both of the things you're saying made me think. I just did a professional development session for our teachers last week, and the topic was AI and cheating, and and so that's that, students turning those things in without ever, doing any work with it, and people ask me all the time, they're like, well, is AI going to replace student thinking, and what about the critical thinking skills for students, and it's going to diminish all of that, and I would argue the opposite. I think if you're using AI well, it can enhance your critical thinking skills. Walker, just what you were saying is because you have to kind of be discerning and thoughtful about what information you're getting, because it's not always right. It hallucinates, it makes things up. Like we've got weird information and biased information and all the stuff that comes through. So while it's like a really great starting point, and this is not just K-12, this is just anybody. It's an opportunity to be like, okay, this is a good start, but is it accurate? Is it correct? Is this what I want? And then be able to iterate off of what your foundation and start is. So I think it's an opportunity to think even more critically.
It highlights it being a strategic thought partner.
Absolutely.
All right. So let's segue to our next question. So what happens when personal algorithms replace shared struggle as a source of growth?
I don't think that personal algorithms can replace shared struggle as a source of growth. I think that education and learning requires struggle. And the same way that you struggle to hit a tennis ball when you're learning tennis, you can't learn anything unless you struggle in a similar way. Struggle is where character forms. If AI removes that, we lose something. Students can learn faster with AI, but they won't learn the habits that make that learning, transferable. We have to distinguish between, information and formation. Formation, requires that sort of struggling to understand and to actually, learn.
And can I follow Walker before I forget what he's talking about? Because that is very important. Once you gather that information from a corporate point, it's kind of important to test it and try it out as well. Because, you can take an idea, but you can't convert it if you don't have, again, the context. So I work with, corporate leadership, which means to me what AI needs more than just the base of knowledge is the need to understand how to use it. It's the decision making. So for the decision making, there's a critical thinking skills that are needed, questions that you need to ask. So in fact, I kind of would try to run it on one of the GPTs, get the answer, but really you have to read it down. And that can be not easy, because if you go with, hey, I learned this and I'm spitting it out, it kind of misses the context. So I think you have to work through the struggle of which one does better. Have you trained the algorithm? And is the algorithm giving you answers that's to your context? So it's just a start, but having that friction, I think, is important, because you remember the neurons make the connection, not a passive learning experience, but more experiential that always then you retain. You forget what you learn on Coursera, at least I do. It's when you try it out and test it out and see it didn't work, then you learn the mistakes of optimization. You learn after you don't get it the first time. So I think that little challenges that you have to do in real time really help you fix a concept, fix the value of whatever you learned from the AI tool. Learning.
Well, you brought up a really good point in regards to learning by doing. So in terms of being audio, visual, kinesthetic, most people learn best by doing, being actively involved in the learning.
Yeah. And to that point, and Stephen, about struggle, I really do feel for you and Courtney, because I've been having these conversations with educators, and I think the onus is on you guys. I have a lot of educators that are coming saying, how do we know if they used AI? And my answer is that's not the question. The question is, how do we know that they learned what we wanted them to learn, regardless to how they got there, right? And so the challenge for the two of you, and like I said, I don't envy you, and for teachers everywhere, is to change the goalposts, right? It's not I heard of teachers making it so that students only are allowed to take paper exams. I'm like, that completely misses the point. They're not going to be able to just write slide decks on papers, or they're not going to do interviews on paper. I think the real challenge here for all educators is, how do we know whether the student is struggling, and how do we know whether the student is actually learning what we need them to learn? And yeah, that's really difficult, but we're going to be creating a whole new class of citizens who are able to take this tool and hopefully build on top of it, versus how do we make sure that they've memorized these words, or how do we make sure that this essay was actually written by them?
And I think
to your point, the theme is sort of like, how are we preparing students for the workforce of today?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Johnny, you brought up an interesting point, and thanks for your empathy in the situation as educators are in. And it's just safe to assume that if you're giving students, no matter what grade they're in, well, maybe not younger kids, but they're going to use AI, right? They're going to use it. They're using AI. Any take-home assignment, it is absolutely 100% happening. Whether they're using it well is another conversation, because most younger students are not using it well because they're not prompting well. So you're not getting really quality outputs. But I think it's our job as educators to really think about what we're assessing and what we want and what we want to see exactly what they're learning, and then design assignments and assessments with AI in mind. Like, we can't fight it. It's not going anywhere. So let's work with it, right? I'm not saying every assignment needs to be using AI, but we can use it in ways where we can see students learning and their thinking and how they're going through. I watched an interview with AI EDU, and they interviewed a college professor who expects his students to use AI in their assignments. And he actually says, here's your assignment. Let's put it into this LLM, put it into this LLM, compare where was it wrong, where did it get it right, and then about that. And then take that piece and now create something new with what you've done. So podcast, comic book, short film, whatever they want to do, so they can be creative with the AI. So it's not the paper is not the end all be all. It's just part of the process of thinking.
Yeah, Courtney, once again, Andrew and I are on the same page here, because that's exactly what we're doing too, is we're trying to develop curriculum assignments that either require students to use AI to do them, or we're designing it so that you can't really use AI to do it.
And that's an AI literacy piece, right?
Okay, I just had to give a hats off to Courtney and Stephanie before Walker. Sorry. You're more innovative in your ways of finding those assignments than the students. Okay. 5 stars.
And I know, Walker, I promise I'll let you say what you want to say in 10 seconds. But like, the code to all this is because we are training students for the world of tomorrow, not today. Right? I feel like a lot of people are acting like everything is going to be like this for the next 10, 20 years. The next 6 months is going to look different than the last 6 months. And so, again, tons of empathy. We're training students for the jobs of tomorrow.
Yeah, and that makes it hard when we have 4-year degrees.
It's true. And I think building on that, like this effortful recall is so important for folks to retain and learn critical thinking skills. I think that if you believe that maximizing the potential of a new technology like AI is not effortful, then you've never tried to do it before. Right? Anyone who has spent any time coding or doing web design or even just like scripting simple things or doing data analysis knows that in order to achieve the best quality you can get out of those tools, there's a process that I lovingly refer to as beating your head against the wall until the wall falls down. Right? And AI is similar. If you want to generate mediocre outputs with AI, sure. One shot prompt it, turn it in, you're done. How's your teacher going to tell you used AI? Well, half of the facts about the book aren't correct, right? Versus like this very serious, effortful, iterative process that you need to go through with the tool in order to push that tool to its maximum potential. So yes, if we take the easy way out using the tool, it's going to be easy. But if we really want to get as much as we can get out of it and achieve, the 90th percentile or higher of quality using that tool, it's not easy, right? It is an effortful, critical thinking involved process that everyone's going to need deeply in 5 years, to Johnny's point. Yeah.
I love the discussion about, or your thought about, if you want something mediocre, then just keep doing what you're doing. But you really have to get in there to get the results that you want, quality results that you want. I think in terms of personal algorithms, for me, I see it from the standpoint of it's going to make the personal struggles more strategic, so that instead of struggling to learn, I'm thinking of the workforce of today into the future, more strategic, the struggle in terms of critical thinking skills, problem solving, collaborating across teams, those types of things that are really critical in terms of the workforce. Versus, yes, you learn Excel or Word or those, the programs. Is that what you want the focus of your work to be? So again, it goes back to it being more strategic in terms of the struggle, because those higher level skills are really moves the needle within a business. And it also goes back to discernment, because the critical thinking skills are going to expose that or help people discern things. And then in terms of workflows, how businesses operate, it's going to translate into that as well.
I mean, I've been a business owner. Oh, go ahead.
Go ahead.
I've been a business owner for the last 10 years. I had the pleasure of hiring the students that Courtney and Steven send out into the world. And I have to say, the least important part of their resume is whether they know how to use Word, Excel, whether they've done this or that. And the most important part of the resume was things that showed me their critical thinking skills. I quickly weed people out because in order to apply to any of my companies, you have to already send me like the solution to a riddle, right? You have to go out and get information and process it and bring it back to me. And these things are not easily Googleable. They're not easily AIable. And I think nothing's really changed. The best people in the workforce are going to be the ones who can take disparate pieces and put them together in novel ways. They need hunger. They need drive. They need to want to be there. No amount of AI is going to add or take that away. And I really believe that it's going to, those who normally would shine are going to shine even brighter, because you can't fake drive.
So people applying, do you have to tell you how many R's are in the word strawberry?
Exactly. So you built an AI that can count how many R's are in strawberry. Humble brag.
Which kind of brings the question up of, what do I really need to know? Is that really important? But knowing how many R's are there in strawberry. And you can ask that with the ChatGPT or something, you put it in, it'll tell you how many, if you don't want to count them, that is. But the question, I think what Johnny is telling is, what makes that need to know the number of R's in strawberries important and relevant? And you're right. That's when when you interview somebody or you're talking to you're somebody who reports into you, you have to make a decision that if you're going to tell the manager, I found a tool, I created an agent that tells me how many R's are there in strawberry, he's going to just look at you, because the point is the co-pilot has been kind of rolled out maybe across big groups. The question is, what are people doing with it? So the thing is, are they improving themselves? Or are they making these gadgets? Now, I would argue that even doing this little agentic mode of figuring out a way to count the number of R's is the first step towards AI fluency, because you're trying to test the system and test your knowledge of how you can use it. And if it's done in isolation, in a safe place, I think that's brilliant, right? But then you kind of understand the context in which it is used. So you kind of then can say the AI fluency bit comes in, and then you can think, okay, I know what it's doing, why it's doing, how it's doing, and I know how I can use it for my next gig. Which I'm probably, Johnny, you build something much more spectacular based on that initial experience. So
Well, you brought up a very good point.
My next goal is to figure out how many chimneys are in this picture. Once I can crack how many chimneys are in this picture, then I know I'm in business.
Famous problems AI.
You got to do bikes too. How many bikes?
Right. And bridges.
Yeah.
All right, let's move on to our next question. So how can communities of practice act as a counterweight to AI's tendency towards isolation?
I'll start off if that's okay. I don't think AI pushes people towards isolation. I think people using AI without communities do. And I think that having a community of people that can help you learn AI is so important. And I see that a lot with teachers. So when I'm training teachers, if they're using AI tools, they're trying to figure it out and they're doing it alone, kind of in their own little isolated little bubble, they struggle and they're frustrated. But when we get together and we have a community of practice, that's where things really shine. And as you said, that's where the magic happens, right? Yeah. So when they're learning these tools and they're learning together, they're building their AI literacy, their AI awareness, and they're doing it faster and in a much more robust way that's helping them learn the technology. And they're like, oh, hey, I didn't think about that. That's a great idea. You did that great thing. I'm going to steal that and I'm going to do that too. And so we see that across the community of practice. So I think that the isolation of AI is by choice if somebody's choosing to do that, but choosing to be in community can make it so much better. And it can become essential for meaning and learning and making AI stick better.
I think part of the isolation happens because AI anxiety is real and people feel like they're behind. So struggling alone. I know from how I've set up my practice that because I realize that people are comparing themselves to other people when it comes to how quickly they're learning generative AI skills. So we have them do lessons individually online, and then we come together collectively as a group to discuss it. And it goes back to that's where the magic happens. But because they can learn at their own pace and not feel anxious or embarrassed of where they are, and then they get the skills, they have the time to get them on their own. And then we come together and talk about it. And then it's like you can see the light bulb go off.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's so great because I think even if somebody feels like they're behind, once you bring people together, they're like, "Oh, okay, there's other people where I'm at too. I'm not behind."
Yep.
Yeah, I think
technology has been making us more isolated since the early 2000s, right? This is nothing new. Algorithms have been designed to polarize us and to drive us into our own little bubbles. I think the real conversation we're having now is we're looking down the horizon and we can see that it's only going to get worse if we're not careful. And I think it's on each and every one of us, everyone listening to this, anyone who's ever thought about this, to ask themselves, how do I put myself in community, right? It's easy when you're in a structured environment, 4 years of school, learning something for your job. But how about when you go home, right? I think we're all craving community. I don't know if this is an AI solution. It certainly is an AI problem, but I think it's on all of us to seek out and join communities before it's too late.
And there's the potential there for a AI product solution, right? Because the isolating part about AI youth right now is the product, right? It's the chatbot. It's that mode of interaction is what puts you literally like in a box, not paying attention to the world around you, right? Similarly with social media, there's positives where it is allowing people to stay connected to folks they wouldn't have stayed connected to for a long time. There's giant groups all over the world you wouldn't have been able to form otherwise. But also there's some product design features that are isolating. So I think this is a big challenge to the tech community and the AI community, and especially the product designers and UX people in those communities to think about how can you promote genuine community interaction using the power of generative AI. So I'll just throw that.
That is my greatest fear with OpenAI and the big guys, the Mag 7, all kind of jockeying for position. I don't let the AI take any of my data. It actually lives in a box where I'm running open source models under my desk. I do not want any of these giant players to have any of my data. I come from the Web3 world, and AI is the most centralizing force in the planet. I really hope that over time people start to realize this and potentially want to seek out maybe not the easiest and most dopamine inducing product, but hopefully the product that either respects their data privacy, puts them in community, or even better, I would love to see people running their own their AIs under their desk like me, because it's not that difficult.
I just wanted to chime in with the term anthropomorphism that kind of has been coming on quite often. And at the point at which AI is isolating or creating a companionship, maybe it's not isolating, but creating a companionship with this AI interface, and you are kind of interacting as though that's the friend and you don't need anybody else. And I think that's where I see the struggle. I think parents have the struggle because kids are getting isolated with the social chatbots. They're working in the room. They're not sitting at the table and talking. They're texting. So yes, just as social platforms tend to create an isolation, also cutting down the social capabilities of social communication in person, I think that human touch is kind of important. I don't think AI is going to cause that to happen, but AI is definitely adding to that factor of isolation. And so, as I think the others I totally agree with the belonging, learning from the communities. And I think people in AI, at least in the corporate world, I have no clue who knows AI, who doesn't, or what they know. So AI is definitely helping them make their step into that learning curve and building their AI literacy to move towards fluency, not really there, but it is doing it well. And I think I love it because it gives them a safe space to learn without declaring they don't know, and then sharing in those communities. I think that is where it's very important. It's a community I really still think is the core for us humans. That's what I would say. So we don't get lost in that anthropomorphic world of, I know what I know, and my friend here, who's a mechanical whatever algorithm, knows as much as I do. And I think you need to break that because it can be disastrous too.
I would come at this problem of isolation. I mean, like Johnny said, it's not an AI-driven thing. This has just been happening for a long time. And, if you consider AI as, the algorithms that are keeping people on their phones on TikTok and everything, then yeah, that's another type of AI that is causing that isolation. I think the first way I'd come about it is by teaching responsibility, trying to get people to get more involved in their community and to actually, rise up and, start doing things. And the other big one that we haven't touched on yet that really is the crux of it, I think, is commitment and accountability. A chatbot cannot keep you accountable. If you're trying to learn something and set a deadline for I need to learn this in this amount of time, the chatbot will just sit there. And if you never interact with it again, then it's not going to hold you accountable. There's no replacing that social pressure of having an instructor, a professor, or a friend that is relying on you for a project, holding you accountable to actually, submit an assignment or to, work on your part of the project so that they can also benefit from, your group effort.
The theme that I'm hearing is that community is the connective tissue in all of this. And then I kind of go back to so many people are more comfortable like not talking in person, but texting people. So being able to have people feel comfortable talking to someone else. I sort of think of growing up. Well, we didn't have, text wasn't a thing back then. But I just remember in terms of hiring people, like having them give me writing samples and they wrote like they texted, that sort of communication. So you wonder if they talk the same way. But it's sort of, how can we get people back together? Stephen, like getting out and being together and interacting organically with one another.
Yeah, I'm actually seeing the opposite in communication, actually, because, there are some people I know that are literally just always using ChatGPT when they're writing to me, either email or texting. And it is so frustrating. Or because I know it's AI, and you see the little M dash and it's but no one ever used that before ChatGPT started doing it. which makes you wonder, like, how did it get into its lexicon of writing it if no one ever used it and now it loves to use it? But
Stephen, when they started doing Twitter and everything got like BFF, OMG kind of a thing, when that started coming into corporate email, and especially when we did a lot of outsourcing, it was terrible. I'm like, what are they saying? I mean, maybe I'm dating myself, but still in an email, when you're writing everything formally, and I think that's the same thing what you're referring to is when you have a Chat GPT rewrite or the Copilot rewrite what you're doing and put it into it, you forget to check because I know it says things. I do it because it frames it easily and neatly, but I read it because it doesn't sometimes, it extrapolates. Yeah, so I think, but wanted to add, Monica, that the water cooler effect is still strong and makes so many things happen in a corporate world.
Yeah.
And the new kids that I have seen, the new interns that are on rotation, they don't seem to get it that they need to get up from their seats and talk, not about texting, oh, I found this wonderful information in the email. So I know it is not necessarily AI generated, but it's the mindset that we are getting used to learning through it, but not learning how to express it to one another.
Well, that social interaction is very important. I don't know, like the people that graduated from college and the pandemic hit, so they had never been in an office situation, like a traditional office situation. And, being by the water cooler, having those discussions and then having to transition to that. I've heard some founders and executives talk about what the transition has been like for them. And it's quite awkward because they haven't had the advantage of having been in the traditional work environment and having sort of the water cooler discussions or, at lunch, sitting down with someone or a group of people and having discussions. It doesn't have to be work related, just having that connection with people at work. So it'll be interesting to see how things evolve over time.
And I think it's interesting that the challenge framed that way assumes that there's a return to traditional office work, which, yes, right now that is where the trends are going. But like I've been working remotely since 2014, long before the pandemic, with a brief stint in the office right before COVID in a new job, and then got sent back home again. And the biggest thing that's missing is those unplanned interactions, right? Like I used to have an office next to the CEO in a company I worked for, and I would hear him yell on the phone about something, and I'd go over and say, hey, that sounds like something that we could solve with some training. What do you think about this idea? And when you're remote, you have to be intentional about creating those spaces, like creating formalized mentorship programs, creating office hours, creating opportunities to come together around new technologies like AI and share what you're learning. It has to be this much more deliberate, systematic, random interaction, which sounds counterintuitive. But assuming that a lot of companies are never going to be back in an office or weren't there in the first place, that's a really important muscle for the corporate world to develop.
Well, that goes back to company culture and whether companies are, whether they have said about it intentionally or not.
Yeah, exactly.
All right, let's move on to our next discussion. So could collective intelligence itself become a measurable learning outcome?
I guess the question is, what is collective intelligence first? How do we define that? I don't know if I have an answer.
Well, I can take a shot at it.
Go ahead. What'd you say, Free?
I think the way I am seeing it from a corporate environment is the whole wave of trying to bring and introduce generative AI tools and co-pilots into the organizations. And they haven't even thought through about what are we trying to measure. It's like, give it to them, try it, and then withdraw it once they see all the bad things that are happening, right? I mean, I know with CDC, there used to be, I don't know if they still are, a group that kind of adopted it. And from a productivity point of view, we kind of asked her, how are you measuring this collective use of generative AI, is it creating greater team collaboration? That means greater productivity, or is it about self-productivity? So I think we need to start with, when we define collective outcomes, what is it that we're trying to measure? If, for instance, we learn and start taking advantage of working and networking and improving our networks and ability to trade ideas over a practice, I think that is positive, because that generates idea, and those are generate innovations. So counting in terms of innovations or new projects becomes very helpful. So it depends upon where you're talking about collective intelligence and what is the purpose of that collective intelligence. In a corporate world, I think it's all about business outcomes. Do we have new products? Do we have better, more efficient? Have we reduced wait time because of this interaction? So that's where I think, from a very corporate world, it's about what the group can do now that it couldn't do before.
I would agree on the corporate side. I view collective intelligence. Yes, you have the individual productivity as an example, but one person being more productive is not going to move the needle for the whole organization. So being able to have everybody be more productive, that's by the individuals sharing how they're doing things to be more productive and others learning about it, that drives the collective intelligence.
Yeah, I guess one way that we at ECPI are measuring that sort of collective intelligence, as far as, are they using generative AI? We partnered with OpenAI over a year ago with their EDU product, enterprise product, where we're able to give licenses to all of our faculty and staff. And, we rolled it out, and, we had over 1,500 people with licenses. And over time, over a period of only about 6 months, that was all the way down to 500, because we removed access to everyone that wasn't actually using it. So I guess the adoption rate of, ChatGPT in our case with OpenAI, very few of our, or at least a small percentage, not even a majority, are even using ChatGPT or some of these other LLMs. So they're obviously not very good at, using it as a tool for prompt for teaching or for anything else like that. So we're trying to develop that out. And one of the things that I'm responsible for is how do we continue to get that adoption rate up and to do that training on how to use these AI tools. So as a measurable outcome, that's one.
I think this is where to get a little meta about it. What I was talking about earlier is, like, you can use communities to power that AI adoption. And that's the key, right? Is make AI enablement and adoption and enthusiasm, even, dare I say it, right? A goal of community-based tactics, right? Getting people together to share what they've built and the things that they found productive this week, having them build custom GPTs and share those out with other faculty who might find them useful, celebrating the people who are driving really phenomenal student outcomes and reactions using ChatGPT. Like, this is where, like, yes, sure, the AI can help us with community, and the two together can help us learn third learning goals, but also community is the key to getting people into the AI revolution, which they need to be ready for, like it or not. Those 1,000 people that dropped off, if they stay that way, are going to have a real tough time in 10 years.
Right. And once I show people how to use this in the classroom, as our instructors, like, they are just amazed, and then they become evangelists for the whole thing. So it's really just a matter of getting in front of people and showing them how they can actually use it in their job, or a student, like, in their field or in their studies. And once you show them a really amazing way that they can use it, that's when that adoption happens, and they just enhance that, create their own community and start to talk about it with others.
Stephen,
that's really
you say that because I was at my sorry. It's interesting that you say that in the droppage of usage of users. I was at my alma mater a couple of weeks ago speaking to some prospective teachers for a class, and they were super nervous about using AI. They didn't feel like it was ethically good to use it because of, like, it was cheating, or that they just chose not to use it because they didn't feel like it was enhancing their education. And so we looked at some ways that they can use it, not only as a student, but as a teacher, as they're going into their teacher learning programs. And they were like, oh, I didn't know AI could do that. I didn't know AI could do that. I'm like, yeah, so this isn't cheating. We're using our resources. We're not like cutting things short. Like, we're making you more efficient. And if I was a student at a university, or high school level, I'd be using AI to help me learn and study and do all of the things I need to do, knowing full well that I'm not going to be able to use it on the exam I'm going to take on Friday, but I'm going to use it to help me learn better and be more efficient as a student, which is what your job is as a university student.
It makes me think of calculator use when you were a kid, right? I remember being like, well, why don't, gosh, they're like, someday you might not have a calculator. I'm like, well, then it's going to be World War III. So, like, I don't know.
I was in old school for, you're never going to have a calculator in your pocket. And I'm like,
yeah. And so, like, I understand the early need, like, so you still need to learn number properties and things like that.
Of course.
Cognitively without the assistance of a tool. But like using the tool, I think pretty early on as part of your practice is important to being really successful. And you see that with like using abacuses to teach kids math now and things like that, right? And like manipulatives and things like that. Those are technological tools that are designed to scaffold parts of the cognitive process. And this is no different. It's just a much more advanced version of that.
Well, Stephen, you brought up a really interesting point when you were talking about when you show people what they can do. And I think the collective, and I know that the collective intelligence is really centered upon what Walker said in terms of community, but also making AI useful, understandable, and relevant to what they do. That's when the light bulb goes off and they get excited about it.
Mm-hmm. Yes, Stephen and Courtney, I'm really interested in learning from the two of you. It's been said that the chat window is the best UI we've invented so far because it's just natural language. But I can see how, the dauntingness of, well, what do I ask it? So putting on the spot a tiny bit, but like, what is something that you found that what's the first thing you show an educator to kind of help them kind of have that aha moment?
I would say the first thing that I do, at ACPI, we've rolled out an entire AI platform with specific narrow use cases that students are required to use and very specific ways to do assignments and things. The first thing I show them is that. We have an assignment, for instance, on the healthcare side. One of the first courses they learn in Bio 101 is, what is mitosis? And so the chatbot literally will prompt the student about, do you already know what mitosis is? Say it in your own words. And then it will start asking them about each step along that whole process. And then it will evaluate their answers and kind of guide them along and give them hints. And, I show an instructor that, and they're just amazed because it'll take away a lot of the tedious work that instructors have to do all the time of just teaching the basics, teaching definitions. Like, you don't need an instructor to teach definitions. Students can just read that. Now, assessing their knowledge is the different story, and just assessing the basic definitions, that's where AI is very good at doing that. And in fact, the feedback I get from all of our faculty that are starting to use some of these tools in AI conversational, assignments is that they're freed up. They can now address the students that are wanting to go a little bit extra above. It raises the, teachers, like the general principle for teachers is you teach to the middle of your class, and you have to spend a little extra time on the people that are struggling, and then you give no attention to the time or no time and attention to the people at the top. This allows you to bring that bottom up using AI. And then the teachers really love talking about the more fun stuff and not just the tedious basic stuff. And so the students love to use it because it gives them that personalized attention. And then the instructors love it because it allows them to do what they really like to do, which is actually teach and not just, try to teach definitions.
Well, thank you for that, Stephen. I love how we're shifting from the middle ground to raising the altitude of everybody in the classroom. Mm-hmm. So let's have some final thoughts or key takeaways from our discussion today. Stephen, we'll start with you.
Sure. So, AI is changing how students learn, but it's not going to replace the, a college or university or the, K through 12 or anything like that. The algorithms are going to speed up understanding, but they can't replace that sort of pressure, expectation, and accountability that is required of them in order to get them to learn, because a chatbot is not going to hold them accountable.
All right. Thank you. And we're going to ask everybody to give brief answers. Thank you so much. Priya.
Okay. So I don't want to repeat everything, but I really think AI is there as a very strong contender for teaching and helping us learn. But I think it's going to be the communities and the mentorship that we get from that's really going to convert all that learning into what I think is decisioning, intelligence, and leadership capabilities and skills. So.
Thank you. Walker.
I'd say AI is a new and groundbreaking tool, but it is still a tool. And the people who put in the time and the effort to challenge themselves, challenge the tool, and push it to its limits are the people who are going to win, and the companies that are going to win using AI in the future.
Johnny.
Walker took my answer, so I guess I will. I'll just add that it's on us. We have the choice. We have the ability to either let it make us more isolated or less isolated. We have the opportunity to either be afraid of it or to embrace it. And it's 100% on us. And I'm excited about that.
All right, Courtney.
Yeah, I agree with what everybody says. And I think that as we, I love that we're having these conversations so that as we move forward with AI and learning and education, that it gives me a lot of optimism, because if we can get the balance right with AI and community, we're not just going to learn faster, we're going to learn deeper, and we're going to learn it together. And that makes me really hopeful for the future of learning in AI.
So we had a great discussion today about the personalized learning with AI, and common themes. One is that personalized learning meets people where they're at, which is desperately needed. The other one in regards to communities. Yes, you learn the skills, but the magic actually happens with the community because you learn from each other. And it's the learning from each other that's the force multiplier. And then goes back to the collective wisdom. Because you're learning from other people, you are rising the boats. The tide. What's the saying about the tide rising all boats? When people are learning together, they're elevating their skills.
Excellent. Well, thank you, Monica, and thank you to the rest of this group for the great discussion over the last 55 minutes or so. Before we go, though, I would like to invite each of you an opportunity to self-promote your book, podcast, LinkedIn profile, company solution, wherever you'd like to send our audience. The floor is yours, 30 seconds or so, and we'll start with Walker.
Walker Williams, NACA.io is my consultancy where I help tech and tech-adjacent companies do things like adopt AI, lead more effectively, and build technical skills. Always open to chat. Anyone who wants to talk about AI enablement in the future.
Excellent. Thank you for being here. Appreciate your time today. Priya, over to you next.
Hello, everybody. I am Priya Sarthi, and my company, Wheel Data Strategies, is all about helping just newly started, getting started, and medium-sized companies identify what it is about the AI readiness they need to do and how to set themselves up for success. I bring it all together in helping AI leaders with the book that I published, AI Leadership Compass. You can lead with clarity, and you can find that on Amazon, and you can connect with me on LinkedIn. Love to have a chat. Love where this conversation went. So thank you, and look forward to it.
Thank you for joining us. Stephen, over to you.
Hi, Stephen Arthur, ECPI University. We're trying to position ourselves as the leader in AI enhanced learning and support. And we've been thinking very deeply about what AI means for our industry and higher ed especially. And, we've not just thinking about it, but acting on it for the last year and a half. And so, we think we are one of the leaders in AI in higher ed, and we're having fun doing it, really.
Thank you for coming, Stephen. Appreciate your time today. Johnny, where would you like to send the audience?
Hey, so for the first time ever, we are now able to, instead of creating one-size-fits-all programs that or that fit nobody, we're now able to make software that fits individuals and their organizations like tailored clothing. And we can actually do this for 10 times cheaper than what it would have cost 4 years ago. So if you head over to datalist.consulting or find me on LinkedIn, I'd love to tell you more about it.
Thank you. Sounds good. And Courtney.
Thank you so much for having me. This has been a wonderful opportunity to have some great conversation. And people can find me on LinkedIn. That's where my professional work is. And I also am available for some chats and some consulting work on implementing AI with educators and your teachers. So find me over on LinkedIn.
I'd like to send the audience to my LinkedIn profile, which is at Monica D. Higgins. That's the LinkedIn profile. And again, I'm with Proof to Prove. We do AI skills training for business operations and customer experience professionals that drives results.
Excellent. Thank you for joining. Appreciate your time today.
Thank you for having me.
Excellent. And with that, I would love to thank our panelists once again, and of course, our audience for watching over this past hour. Appreciate your time. If you'd like to dive deeper in this topic and learn more about enterprise tech and all things AI, we encourage you to join the conversation at our always-on destination for exactly that, insightjam.com, home for the human conversation. Or you could subscribe to our YouTube channel for weekly podcasts, panel highlights, expert advice, live programming like this, and a whole lot more. We're already over 1 million subscribers, and we would love to include you among them. And coming up in just a few short minutes, another Insight Jam expert keynote. Ann Murphy of She Leads AI is discussing the care architecture of AI. For now, for me and the rest of this group, thank you very much for your time today. Appreciate it. We hope to see you next time. Bye-bye.
For video highlights, replays, and more, visit insightjam.com.